Hi, my name is Inessa Levkina, and today I'd like to discuss with you what do we actually call classical music. Does a composer have to be dead to become a classic? And if so, can we consider all the dead composers as classical? Or has it something to do with instruments? Maybe a classical music piece has to be written for acoustic instrument like piano or violin. Or maybe these are only very, very long pieces that, with hardly any beat, that we listen to in the concert hall, and by all means, no dancing at all. Well, Stockhausen is not with us anymore, and he's considered by many people as classical. But one of his most famous pieces is called the Helicopter Streich Quartet. So he was composing for helicopters. Johann Strauss, on the other hand, wrote for the string orchestra, but mostly the popular dance music, valses, polkas, quadrilles, etc. In fact, he was a famous DJ of his time. Does he qualify to be a classical composer? I think to define the term classical music, we have to agree that it has nowadays at least two different meanings. First of all, it is the name of the music created in the time of classicism in European culture between 1750 and 1830. And this is the correct use of the term classical music, I believe. But many people use it in the broader sense to define everything that is not pop, jazz, rock, or folklore. And that has a proper name, actually academic music. These are two vivid examples of classicism in art and architecture. As you see, both of them refer to ancient Greek and Roman style. We can see that the artists pay great attention to simplicity, proportion, clarity of structure. We can feel hereby that they consider human intellect primer to emotions. All these features we can find in the music of three great composers of that time: Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. They lived and worked in Vienna and therefore are often called the first Viennese school or Viennese classical school. Haydn was the oldest and lived the longest life. All his life he worked as a Kapellmeister at the Prince Esterhazy court and had to compose a new piece almost every day to entertain the prince, his family, and his guests. As a result, he created enormous amount of beautiful music and invented symphonic orchestra as we know it, and the new genres such as string quartet and symphony. He had a joyful character, and that comes over in his music. He also liked jokes and used humor in his pieces, like in his Surprise Symphony. In the second part of it, after a very calm and peaceful theme, he suddenly gives a very loud chord, tutti. Surprise! As he explained it later, he did it to wake all those in the audience who fell asleep already. The person next to Papa Haydn, as he was often called by fellow musicians, is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, a genius, a wonderkind, that started to learn to play violin, clavicembalo, and organ at the age of 4. First pieces he composed when he was 5 years old. And as a 6-year-old child, he went to his first tournée with his father and older sister Nannerl. His music remains unsurpassed. His compositions sound out of this world, as Albert Einstein once said. What makes it more astonishing, Mozart never used drafts, never changed a note, as if he was taking dictation and his only target was to keep up. The third composer of the Viennese classical school is Ludwig van Beethoven. And first thing people know about him, that he was deaf. And that he wrote ta-ta-ta-tam, and apparently said about it, "Thus fate knocks at the door." It's true, he had a very difficult life and a difficult personality, and all this reflected in his music. We can say that throughout his whole life, Beethoven made music about the opposition of the individual to his cruel fate and his way from darkness through struggle to the victory. For these revolutionary ideas, Beethoven needed the new tools, so he modernized symphonic orchestra, used new harmonic sounds, which were, by the way, often considered false by his contemporaries. He was also the first composer that made grand piano a solo instrument, made it sound as an orchestra, and invented a new style of piano performance. So these were the Viennese classics, but serious music was written before and after them, and also outside Vienna, of course, and this music we call academic. And I realized that such a name could creep you out, and you would think of something boring and complicated. But actually, it only means that this music was composed and performed by professionals. It means that composers have to be educated at least to write down their music, and performer has at least to be able to read the notes. Besides, this music is related to the long existing and constantly developing European musical tradition. So musicians have to be familiar with the history and its regulations, often just to break those. Also, academic music is not meant as dinner or shopping music in the first place. It has meaning. It tells you a story that requires your full attention. As for the special musical hallmarks, they can be very different because academic music exists already for a very long time and includes quite a few various styles such as medieval monody, Renaissance, Baroque, followed by Classicism, Romanticism, Impressionism, Expressionism, Minimalism, you name it. If you found this interesting, you know what to do. If you'd like to learn more about music theory or history of music styles, please find me on Patreon, Instagram, or my YouTube channel. Links are listed below. On Patreon, I publish a new educative video every month about musical structure, scales, intervals, chords, and, of course, the one and only circle of fifths. Especially for children, I have a program of weekly theory pitch training lessons that support their musical development and provide huge assistance for their teachers. These lessons are based on a Russian program for children's music schools, where I started my career as a music theory teacher many years ago, and follow the latest music pedagogical trends of Europe, where I teach for a long time now. Hope to see you soon. Bye bye.